anyone who matters something in the world today is visiting India. The US Under Secretary of State for Political Affairs, Victoria Nuland, is here in New Delhi meeting top officials and policymakers. Nuland is no ordinary bureaucrat. She carries a heft in the American establishment. The Russians accuse her of being the point person who planned the ouster of the ex-Ukrainian president Viktor Yanukovych. If she's here in India, then surely she is delivering a message from Biden. The Japanese and Australian premiers have also reached out to India with promises of massive investment. The Israeli Prime Minister will be visiting next month, and even the Chinese Foreign Minister will arrive in New Delhi in the next couple of days. This flurry of high-profile visits begs the question, why are these visitors making a beeline for New Delhi? It would be logical to assume that besides discussing bilateral matters, these visitors want to read India's mind on the Ukraine war and how its position is evolving. This assumption is only partly correct. In my conversations with sources knowledgeable on these matters, it now appears that these high-profile visitors are visiting India to woo it to be in their corner, not so much in the current state of being, but rather in a post-Ukraine war scenario in which the world order would have fundamentally changed. A realignment of forces is taking place, and every side in the new world order wants India to be on their side. Why is this shift happening? And what changes are coming that will change everything as we know of existing today? All that and more in just a minute. But first, a big welcome to all subscribers and new viewers of the CAA show. CAA, as all of you know, is Conversations and Analysis, and my name is Juggi Bhasin. This is a show for thinking folks, and if you want to be a part of our journey, press the big red subscriber button on your screen. Subscription is, of course, completely free. Now, first, let us understand what changes have been brought on by the Ukraine war. Let us first talk of Ukraine. I'm afraid that despite all the suffering and the sacrifices weathered by that country, it will finally end up as a lost cause. Probably the country will be splintered by the Russians in 2 or 3 parts. Russia already has established its control in all the regions near the coastline in eastern Ukraine. The fall of Mariupol is imminent. This port city will connect Russian forces to the east in Luhansk and Donetsk. Kherson is already occupied by Russian forces. All the other cities in western and northern Ukraine are under the arc of Russian shelling and missile deployment. If you believe the Western narrative, then it would appear the Russian advance has been stalled. They are running out of firepower and their forces are in disarray. My reading of the war, though, is somewhat different. The Russians indeed have been surprised by Ukrainian resistance, but their strategic objectives have largely been met. They control Crimea, and the entire Black Sea coast is almost now under their control. In other parts of Ukraine, they have unleashed so much carnage and devastation that it will take decades for those parts of the country to be rebuilt again. The Russians have repeatedly been saying that they are conducting a military operation. In an operation, you surgically remove, and this is what they have been doing in all these parts. They actually have no need to occupy these regions and cities. I mean, who would want to live in shelled out cities cut off from food, water, and energy supplies? A significant part of the population has already migrated to Western Europe, and more will follow. What will be left of Ukraine will be a wasteland encircled and ringed by the Russians for months to come if need be. They can keep on doing this for a long time and keep on flattening these cities without moving in. No one can come in to help to rebuild and remake the cities. The idea of a kind of a Western world initiated Marshall Plan is simply a pipe dream. So then, what does this scenario mean for Russia, for the United States, Europe, and even India? Russia indeed would emerge weakened and bruised by the conflict and impacted by the sanctions, but simply because it has such deep pockets in terms of oil and energy resources and a vast techno-military base and cutting-edge technology, it will survive and plod on despite the sanctions. The US and particularly President Biden, by playing world statesman, will buy some time domestically vis-a-vis the Republican Party snapping at his heels. But how will President Biden keep galloping food and oil inflation due to the war under check? Now that will be the million-dollar question. The worst hit, of course, will be the Europeans, who will be impacted on three fronts. With a large part of Ukraine pouring in these countries, it would be next to impossible for Western Europe to manage the migration issue sensibly. Secondly, at one go, European companies have lost the lucrative Russian market. And despite all the tall talk of alternate energy sources, the European dependence on Russian oil is not coming to an end anytime soon. Therefore, in a nutshell, all the major players lose in this catch-22 situation, except of course India. As the Russian market vanishes and China and Russia cozy up, and China keeping an eagle eye on its markets, all these major economies have no choice but to gravitate towards India. And this is where India's strategic autonomy policy comes in so handy. By not tilting on any side, India keeps its cards close to its chest, engages with all sides, and ends up not being isolated but in favor in every major world capital. All talk of India's shaky stand in the Ukraine war is simply posturing. The Quad needs India to be in it. Without India, the Quad actually has no meaning. India's blue water navy and the strength of its vaccine industry is the reason for the existence of the Quad. The US knows Russia and Ukraine is just a temporary distraction. In the long run, its real adversary is China. And without an India in the Quad, the whole game plan of standing up to China falls flat. Similarly, Russia and China might cozy up as much as they want, but Russia will never forsake India. Russia understands the tides and vagaries of history more than any other country. They know they cannot get a partner like India. It was a result of our strategic autonomy policy. The United States during the Galwan conflict provided us thermal wear for our troops in those icy heights, and Russia gave us space for our MiG aircraft. At the end of the week, another UN vote on Ukraine will be coming up. Now that will be our test. Do we continue with a policy that has worked so well for us, or do we listen to liberal, illogical voices in the country and buckle under subtle arm twisting from the West and change course? That only time will tell. So on this note, I come to the end of this episode of the CAA show. I hope you enjoyed this particular episode. And if you like our show, do subscribe to us. And on this note, it's goodbye and cheers from my end.